Welcome back to Cards and Comics, and today I've got a 1955 top set break that was recently sold by Probstein. Now, love him or hate him, he does sell a lot of high-end cards on eBay. And I focused on this 1955 set break because he had a lot of cards in PSA 8 shape or grade that is the gold standard for most high-end collectors. So for set collectors especially, the PSA 8 is the desired grade. Now, you might say you can take a grade above or a grade below. I'm sure a lot of collectors do, but I know a lot of collectors who try to build sets in the 50s in the PSA 8 grade. So I want to go through here because this was a really interesting auction to me because a lot of cards were rare and low pop, or I'm considering them rare and low pop. We're going to check during the video. And the prices looked really strong to me, but then I really wanted to investigate and see, were these record-setting prices, or were we still in a correction for all of these cards? So I think, looking at it, I think it's a mixed bag. Some cards have gone up, some cards have gone down, but I think in general, we're going to find is that set collecting as a whole is strong, and I think this is a good example of that. So starting here with card 208, because there's 208 cards in the 55 top set, and I'll set to you guys what a normal pop report looks like for 1955 top. So there's 21,000 PSA 8s and there's 846 85s. However, straight 8s, 21,000, around 176,000, give or take a few, total cards graded. And that puts us right at 12% of all cards have been graded PSA 8. So a low pop would be below 12%, a high pop is above 12%. Pretty simple. So that's our first inference of what a low pop is. Now, total number of 8s is important too. So as you scroll through here, you'll notice that Ted Williams obviously has 4,000 cards compared to Dusty Rhodes, and of those 4,000 cards, there's 35 less 8s than there are of Dusty Rhodes. So you can definitely see the Ted Williams is, from a frequency, much less likely to get an 8. But since it's worth so much more money, it gets submitted a lot more. So that's why you see a lot more 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s as well. So the frequency and the percentage are two numbers to use in tandem to kind of judge true rarity. So go back on this set, and the first card we'll look at is this Pete Daly, because 746 in the Gene Free. So the Pete Daly card number 206. So we'll go to VCP. And we'll go to 1955, card 206, and there's Pete Daly. And that card just sold. And you'll see that the Probstein card was the last one sold for 746. And if you take out this golden auction, which in my opinion, you should take all golden auction results out of any price consideration, because in general, I just don't trust and believe them. The guy is a scam artist, and I'm just not a big believer in how he runs his auctions, but that's another story. But if you look at it in general, it did set sort of a high water mark, sans the golden auction. So it's strong, a strong sale. $200 over the prior card sold in November by Mariah. And the last Probstein auction, again, around $200 more than that. So definitely a strong sell of that Pete Daly card. So going back to the next one on the list, right below it is Gene Freeze for $16.76. So that's a common, and that's a pretty big price. So Gene Freeze is card number 205. So we'll look for card 205. And there might be easier ways to do this. This is just how I run VCP. And card 205. All right, so this card sold by Probstein for $16.76, and you'll see 9 days later it sold again by I won't say the name of the seller, but it's just um, you know. But yeah, he was sold for a little less. So if you look at this, this actually was the culmination of three straight Probstein auctions that did result in the highest price ever sold, and it came down a little bit from there. And one thing you can always do with VCP is check out to see if it was the same card. So 718, okay, 718. So, oh no, sorry, 673. It must have hung up on that last image. That was weird. 718 there. This one is 673, and then the next one to sell was 450. So they all have different serial numbers. So theoretically they're not the same card. I don't think they're the same card. You know, they're still pretty much at a time when almost a year apart, so I don't think they're the same card. Just a rare card. Now let's go back to the pop report. So over here, the pop report, go down to card 205, Gene Freeze, and you'll see that for PSA 8, there's just 41 cards. And so, and from a percentage standpoint, so we'll do the numbers on my trusty calculator. It's going to be, I think, around 10 or 11%. You got to add up all three of these numbers together, though. Over here, you got to add these three together. So that's 80, so 584. So 7%. So that's a low pop in both ways, percentage-wise and in total number. So yeah. And if you go back up to the very beginning, which I didn't do the math here, but an average number of 8s for the set having 208 cards, which I think there's actually only 200. If you go down here, it says I think there's 208. Yeah, 208 cards. But the set goes stuck to 210. I think there's 2 numbers missing or something like that. Something to that effect. So if you divided that number, so on average, so going back up here, and I'm going fast here, but on average, there's 101 8s per card. So that's the second number. It was at 12% was the average percentage of cards grading 8, and on average, there's 101 8s per card. So go back down to card number 205, and you can see Gene Freeze is both on average at 7%, a low pop from a percentage of cards graded 8, and there's just 41, and the average is 101. You can see all these high numbers are very low when you get down to that 101 cards per grade, and then you can see some cards are much higher, some cards are lower. So Gene Freeze is a very low pop. All right, back to the auction. So this card and this card definitely were very high on the whole price point, and where the Freeze was a record setter, and the daily would have been if there wasn't for that odd golden auction. So we'll next go to Sherm Lawler, card 201, and see if Sherm Lawler was an actual record price. So Sherm Lawler, PSA 8, Probstein 1548. Yep. If you take out the golden auction again, golden, throwing off all the prices. Yeah, this definitely was setting up some records. I mean, you go back to 2020. This was a $900 card, and it's had its up and downs. I mean, look at back in 2013, it sold for $800, right? This card's always been a pretty tough card. So I'd say that it's the second highest sell, but it definitely did a lot more than this card did in May. Sold for about $500 more. And if you look at it, it was a nice card. So we go to the pop report. This is card 201. 40 cards. So we looked at the Gene Freeze at 41. This has 40. Again, it's going to be right around 10%, a little less than 10%. percentage of eights graded. So again, on the lower end. So right there, we're seeing that they're either bringing top of market or the highest ever sold on some of these really rare pops. So last we'll look at is this Ed Roebuck card number 195 on this page. So this is just showing that these cards are and these are all commons, right? So these are not stars, and I'll show you some prices of stars too. So again, this card, if you throw out the golden variant here, it brought the most it's ever brought, I think. Yeah. So even back in the day when you had some weird pricing down in 2017, this is the second highest sell ever, outside of the one golden auction. Card number 195 at Roebuck, and if you go to Pop Report, you'll see it's 48 total graded out of around 500. So again, below 10%. So it's not only, it's below the 101 average eights per card in a set. So there you go. I mean, it's definitely a low pop, and you can see these cards that are below 50 total, which all the ones we're looking at so far are bringing really big money. Over $1,200. For the Ed Roebuck. So very common in the set registry to see guys really compete, especially new guys trying, or maybe a guy trying to fill out their set. They have 2 or 3 of these low pops left, and they're really trying to complete their set. Now here's a big card, Norm Zakin, card number 176. I've never even really paid attention to this card. It's $2,000 for an 8. That seems really high. Because that's the same price that Ernie Banks brings in the same set. So let's look at that, card number 176. And yeah, that seems really high, but I'm not an expert in this set. I just collect the stars, so I know about the maze and the mantle and all that. And yeah, obviously this card has been bringing over $2,000 all year. Golden again set the high price, but 2 cards sold for the exact same price. Always kind of look at 277. I'm looking at the serial numbers again. Nope, different cards. I just do that. I'm kind of skeptical sometimes. I think sometimes the cards don't sell, and then they just go to another person to sell, so it doesn't look suspicious. That didn't happen here. So again, this card has always been, I guess, very expensive. Starting, in 2020 when it hit close to 1,000, and then got up to $1,600 in the PWCC auction. So again, I think this is definitely guys putting sets together, and this is one of those hard cards. I will guess it's below 50 on the Pop Report. So let's go to card 176. 39, so it's below 40. So yeah, that's a toughie. So yeah, I think that would show you exactly why that card is bringing $2,000. It's below 40 total, and then if you look over here, it's going to be probably 8 or 9% and as far as percentage of 8. So definitely the hardest one we've seen so far. And pricing, look at that, it's the highest price one we've looked at too. So these registry guys, they know how to go after cards and when they should bring. Almost on the money. The rarity is dictating the price. Here's a good one. Here's the 55 Eddie Matthews. So I'd say, I won't say mid-tier Hall of Famer. I get a lot of people mad when I say that. I'm just saying, like, he's not Hank Aaron in terms of pricing. He's below, so he's in that next tier down in pricing. So he's kind of like second or third tier pricing of a Hall of Famer from the set. So we'll go look at him just to get a price comparison. Brought $535 for an 8. Card number 155. So we'll look at Mr. Matthews and see what he normally brings. And yeah, you can see that's actually going down. So in February we were peaking around $700, but it was up and down a lot. In fact, it sold in March for the same price it sold in June. But it had gone from a high of $785 in March down to $630, and now it's at $530. And if you look at 530 back in history, that's what it was bringing. It was bringing a little bit more than that in 2020. So, I think pricing on this card is pretty much stabilized. It's pretty much flat to what it used to bring. So, this card is definitely back to what pre I don't know, like price explosion pricing. And if you go to the pop report, I'm sure it's going to be one of the easier cards to get in the set. Yep, 220, so double the amount of cards. Normally, you would know, that you would normally have the 101. Now it's 220. And if you look at percentage-wise, it may, even though it has had a lot submitted, it definitely looks like it's going to be above it just based on eyeball. But I'm doing the math, and it's right at 11%, which seems a little bit below, but I think obviously it's had 1,800 cards submitted, so that's as you submit more, that number goes down. But in total, there's 220, so obviously there's more than enough to meet demand. And this is why I think it's really hilarious about those basketball guys in modern going like, oh, 2,000 PSA 10s is not a lot. And you look at these vintage cards like Eddie Matthews with 200, and we're saying, oh, that's plenty of Eddie Matthews cards out there to satisfy demand. And the real rarity is when it gets below 40. And the basketball guys are talking about 2,000 and 10,000, pop 10. So I think it's just interesting how the two markets work. Obviously, vintage cards operate in a much more scarcity range than modern, which makes sense. Okay, Monty Irvin. This is a really interesting one. Now, is this low pop or the fact that Monty Irvin's gained a lot of popularity lately? I've just noticed that Monty Irvin cards are really starting to move. So it's card number 100, and we'll look at the pricing first to see if this is really high or normal for this card. Okay, well, it looks like this card has had some movement above $1,000 for a while, and yeah. So I was wrong. This card has sold for over $1,000 for years, since 2016. So okay, it's an expensive card. Highest price looks to be the infamous golden auction at $15.99. Even though, I was wrong. Look, back in 2019, there was an $1,800 auction. So this card must have been one of the all-time hard ones to get throughout the year. So 1376 actually seems fairly reasonable for a card that in 2020 was selling for $1,500, and 2019 that was selling between $1,600 and $1,800. So that seems like a really reasonable price. So my guesstimate before I look at the pop of this card is that maybe it's gotten to the 50s. Maybe a few more crossed over or got graded, and maybe it's in the 50s now, and pricing has kind of gone down. Close, 48. So there you go, 48 cards. It's been historically one of those really expensive cards, so I think that's why you're seeing that number, But I think that's reasonable. I think whoever got that card probably got it and felt really good about getting it. And I'm sure they needed it for their set. Or they might be a huge Monty Irvin collector, and they're probably really happy with that price. I know 1376 sounds a lot, but I mean there's less than 50 of those cards in existence, so everything seems to be reasonably priced. $300 for some of these cards, still, for 55.8 seems reasonable. Throw a little on the lower side. Okay, here's Joe Collins, number 63, $1,200. So I'm gonna assume it's in high 40s. Low 50s maybe. Card number 63. Card number 63. Ooh, it's 39. Wow. And so we saw the below 40 card before bring $2,000. So let's look it up a little bit. Joe Collins, card number 63. And we'll see if it's an all-time high or low. Joe Collins, and we'll see here. That is, wow, it outsold the golden auction. And it outsold, so it had actually sold in February much higher at 1,700. And in 17, oh no, that was in 2020. In 2020 it sold for $1,700. So it's gone down a little bit. Maybe it was even a lower pop back then. It looks like it's always been a pretty tough card. I mean, it was selling for $1,000 back in 2011. So 10 years ago. So this card, and this is one thing. This is another thing, guys, that you have to really look at when you're doing these sets. And I've just talked about how these low pops and these guys pay a lot of money for these low pops if they're putting sets together. If that pop goes up 5 or 10 cards, the value on these cards goes down tremendously. And the number one complaint you'll get from these set collectors is if they've paid a lot of money for a low pop card that all of a sudden becomes, not a low pop, it gets into that mid-level pop count, the pricing plummets because they're commons. There's no nest or net net for them to fall back into because they're not a popular player, or maybe if they're on the Yankees or Brooklyn, or they're a colorful manager later in life. But in general, without a safety net, a card like Joe Collins, will kind of free fall if 5 or 10 more get graded. So that's a warning, to everyone who wants to set collect, is especially in the 50s when just 5 cards could swing a pricing, $400 to $500. It's just something that you have to kind of always be worried about. And there's a Warren Spahn card for 865. I really like Spahn. There's an Ernie Banks. I'll look up the Ernie Banks. It's always good to look up a few of the stars. So Ernie was card number 28. I love this card. I have this card in a PSA 8. It's one of my favorite all-time cards. Just a Banks, second-year Banks. How could you not love that card? Looks like it's right at VCP. So VCP is 2343, and this card brought, it's right here, 2376. And the one right behind it from pre-war, went down a little bit. Obviously, Heritage had one for 3,700, which, it is what it is. But in February, this was bringing 26. And February is usually when everything was going off the rails. So it's still 2,026. I mean, this card was $1,000 actually $1,200 to $1,300 before. This card's going to settle 1,500 to 1,600 if it goes down any further. I think this card 16 to 800. I would say 16 to 800 is where I think the bottom, the floor on this card is. And then here's the Grote. And so this is kind of the run of kind of these high number short prints. So 1650 for Dick Grote. Okay. Card number 26. And I know he's always been a rare because I'm a pirate guy and I've always tried to get this card in 8. And I'm always shocked when it goes high. Then I have to remember, like, oh, it's a freaking short print. All right, 1650 for the Probstein. Outsold golden. Wow, which is odd. So there you go. That is a record price going back to 2016. So this card did sell for the most it's ever sold. So yeah, here's a record-setting price for Dick Grote, card number 26. Card number 26 should be a little pop. Oh, it's 49. So it's below 50. And again, 50s kind of like below 50s is very, very rare. You'll see another one up here, Hal Newhouser, below 50 as well. Now the 9s, there's 5 9s. There's only 1 9 of the Grote, so maybe that plays into some of this. Next up in the high-priced market is card 25, which is Johnny Padres. If you go to the pop report, Johnny Padres has 5 more and 1 more 9, and price-wise, it sold for $400 less. So if we go to Johnny Padres, card number 25, and see what it sold for before, because we know the Grote was an all-time high. The Padres was not. So REA had an auction where it sold for more in April, and Golden had one that outsold it. So on eBay, it's the highest eBay price, but other private auctions not outsold it. I think it's right where it should be. I mean, it's been selling $1,200 to $1,400, $1,500 back in pre-21. So $1,300 seems about right. It's a little higher pop than the Grote, so it makes sense. In general, all these cards are selling like you really think they should. And there's the Hal Newhouser. So this is the interesting one because we saw card number 24. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Card number 24. So this is the one where we saw it was below. the wrong one. No, that's the right one. So this is, yeah, this is that crazy pants type, where $3,000 on a buy now, and the card normally brings $700. 800 is a little bit higher. Yeah, this is a mystery to me because the card was bringing $700 to $800 years ago, and it's still there. But if you look at the pop report, I believe, yeah, it's below 50. And is it because it's got 5 9s that it's selling so much lower? I mean, compare it to the Groat, it's half the price, and it has the same amount of 8s. So this is definitely, and the Groat has 2 8 5s. This has 0. Is it because of the 4 extra 9s? I mean, this is kind of why some of this stuff doesn't make sense. So this happens a lot actually with these older sets. As cards just get kind of a mystery, or they get a little mythical, and the Groat maybe has more mystery, or it's a more mythical, like harder to get card than the Hal Neuhauser was. And maybe the Groat has now gained in pop, and the Hal Neuhauser has kind of stayed flat. I don't know. I can't really explain it, but I don't think the pop report should explain why the card is basically half of the Groat. So good, whoever got that card probably did a good. That's a good buy at 815 for, even though it's Hal Neuhauser. I'd say that guy probably got out of there with a good deal. Card number 8. Card number 8, Hal Smith, has 37. It's a below 40. That's a really low pop card. $1,600. Makes sense. Card number 8, and I think, again, we're seeing some record prices. If you take out the golden auctions, a lot of these cards would have been the highest price. Yep, and again, PWCC had one go for 18, but very strong. And this card has really spiked. Obviously, in 17 and 18, it was selling for 500. So people have caught on the fact that this card is super rare. So yeah, between 18, 15, 16. Yeah, so this card definitely, and based on the pop report, it's obviously low. 37 cards. So makes sense. So the Jackie brought $6,700, card number 50. And again, we looked at the Eddie Matthews, right? And the Eddie Matthews, was right in the middle. And this Jackie is the lowest it's been since November of last year. So all year long, this card's been over $7,000, closer to $8,000, and now it's broken the $7,000 barrier. So where do I think this card's going to end up? It's never gone much below $4,000 in recent times. I think it's going to settle in around $5,500 to $6,000. I think that's going to be the floor for this card, and I think it's just going to head down to that, right around that $5,500 range. It's a great card, and it's a beautiful card, and I love this card, and I have this card, so I'm biased a little bit, but I do feel it's just a really beautiful card, and but it's not worth $8,000, because even if you go to the pop report on card number 50, you'll see that card number 50 has 208 8, so it's not a rare card for the 55 set. But 208s in total. I mean, we just talked about it. That still not a lot. And then finally, the Harmon Killebrew rookie card number. I don't know why I keep hitting that number, that thing. The Killebrew is card number 124, and I think this is going to be a really mediocre sell. I don't think it's going to be high or low. It is not. It's right in line with everything else. This card sells a lot. You can see this year alone, I mean, look how many sales this card has sold. For the 55 set, this is a lot of sales. So you can see it's right in line. It's not high. It's not low. This card is settling about $2,500, which is right where it should be, I think, for a Hall of Fame rookie card from the 50s. And, and if you look at the pop report of card 124, you'll see it's going to be pretty high. And it is 254. So it's even higher than Koufax. It's higher than Jackie. Um, it's, just scrolling through. It's one of the higher pops in the whole set. So yeah, I think it's definitely, there's a 277 that's Hank Aaron. So Hank Aaron's even higher. Um, yeah, so obviously the Hall of Famers just do the sheer number of cards being submitted, but that Ted Williams is really low. I mean, 100 for a Hall of Famer, right? Um, so I think that's really interesting. I'm scrolling through trying to find the Clemente, and there it is. Well, 123. Yeah, the Clemente's low. That's it's a centering issue on Clemente usually. Um, so yeah, that's why the Clemente rookie card. Some people ask me like why is Clemente so much higher than Koufax? Well, there you go, a lot less eights than the Koufax and the Killebrew and those other cards. So there you go. So that's sort of a review, and so the end of the story is, the reason why I did this is just to show you that look, the star cards are starting to come down. The craziness of the star cards is kind of wearing off, but the rare set collector cards, the low pops are bringing record prices. So that's good. Card collectors are active. They're out there buying the low pops, setting record prices for these cards. Set collecting's active. Collectors are out in force buying cards still. So the market's not dying. There's a price correction on these higher pop stars. Makes sense. So hope you guys like the analysis, like the video. I'll be doing more of these kind of set breakups and just kind of vintage review in the future. And